Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again, and today I'm going to be talking about a new release by Xerjoff, and that's Decas, so stay tuned for that. If you like top 10 lists, fragrance reviews, cologne comparisons, and fragrance battles, hit that subscribe button for more great content. So Dekas was recently released by Xerjoff, as I mentioned. Now this is part of the line that has Naxos in it and Zafiro. I haven't actually tried Zafiro, but I am a very big fan of Naxos. Really enjoy that one. I know it's a very popular release of theirs. And of course, I was interested in trying this one out, not only because it's a new Xerjoff, but also because of the line that it's in. I was pretty enthusiastic, or, I really thought this was going to be a good release. Now, of course, without further ado, I am just going to get right into the fragrance itself. So this one actually opens up, surprisingly, with a huge hit of tobacco. So this one does have tobacco in it, but it surprised me because this is definitely a lighter fragrance. And a lot of people were talking about this as a spring-summer potential really good fragrance for spring-summer. And so I was happy, or surprised, that the tobacco was so forward in this fragrance. And it is very, very forward. It's, to me, a very dry tobacco. Comes off a lot more like a pipe tobacco. Very, very prominent. Definitely in the opening, it's the strongest note that I get. Now, along with that, there is a bit of a fruitiness. This one has an orange note, but I don't get a strong feeling of orange. I do, however, get a little bit of a fruitiness and a citrus vibe, which I'm assuming here comes from the orange. There is also a very slight floral note. Don't really pick it up, but there is floral in the opening as well. I wouldn't call it pronounced, but if you're looking for it, I think you'll find that it is certainly there. Now, as I mentioned, this is a very light smelling. I wouldn't go on to say that it's fresh, but it's a tobacco fragrance that isn't thick. It isn't heavy in any way. And like, if you've tried Naxos, I mean, some people call this like Naxos Light. And especially on the opening, I do get a little bit of a similar tobacco vibe. I get a similar kind of feel, but it doesn't smell like Naxos at all. It doesn't even smell like a light Naxos, but it is a light tobacco fragrance. So I've always been interested in, light tobacco fragrances or fresh tobacco fragrances because there's not that many of them. It is a little bit more unique. There's Eau Fraiche by Gallagher Fragrances. I wasn't a huge fan of it just because it gave me a little bit of an ashtray vibe. There's also Tabaron by Creed, which I was quite surprised about. This one is not talked about a lot by the house, but it is actually quite good. But again, fresh tobacco is different, and I appreciate that, but this is done really well. Now, there is a sweet undertone to this one as well. So right up front, it does have this very light tobacco vibe with a nice, slightly resinous touch to it with a light sweetness. Now again, they managed to do that, or pull that off while still being a very light fragrance. Now, as this one dries down, it still stays very, very light, but it does definitely thicken up a little bit. And I definitely get a lot more of the resinous qualities. So I think this one has benzoin. There's also, I think, vanilla in the base, and in fact, that mix of benzoin and tobacco and vanilla reminds me a little bit of Creation E Parfum Cologne. Now, they don't smell the same. Again, they really don't smell the same. I wouldn't compare them. But there is a little hint of the dry down in the dry down of this. And again, I think it's just that benzoin, vanilla, tobacco mixture that is in both fragrances. But not a clone. I always try and dig to try and find something to compare it to, but it does actually smell fairly unique. This whole way through this fragrance, I didn't really think of other fragrances just on its own. Nothing really popped to my head. But anyways, it gets a little bit thicker. It still does have a light feel to it, but it does get a little bit thicker, a little bit more resinous. It does have sweetness to it, a little bit more sweetness, but it never becomes really sweet. It never becomes even kind or moderately sweet. This is a very light sweetness with a sort of slightly thick resinous touch in the dry down. So, it's not a super complex fragrance. It doesn't change a ton. It does become, like I said, just slightly more resinous, and as those base notes really start to come in, and a little bit thicker, but still very light. Now, saying that it's light, I think, is a little bit deceiving. So it's not in the sense, performance-wise, it isn't something that just you don't even smell. It does actually have pretty good sillage, and it is something that sits in the air for a while. What I mean by light is that some fragrances I find to be very thick or dense. So if you think of something like, especially a lot of gourmand fragrances are like this, and a lot of winter fragrances can be like this. Something like Rosé All Day. So, I mean, yes, it's very strong, but it's also very dense smelling. And this has a very nice lightness that I think is something that does actually make it a little bit easier to wear in the light or in the warm weather. And honestly, I think the best time for this one would be spring. So this one, perfect for spring. Probably could be worn in the summer as well. Fall, definitely. Winter, it should work still. Like, this is, to me, a solid year-round fragrance. The only, I mean, winter, in some case, like summer, if it's really hot, probably not the best. If it's really cold out, like I said, it is a little bit lighter, so it might suffer a little bit. But, you know, back to the performance. It does have good longevity as well. So I do get around that 8-hour mark. And I find it is something that is a really nice, enjoyable smell the entire way through. I really did enjoy this fragrance all the way through. Now, what is it suitable for? I mean, this one can be dressed up easily. So a lot of Xerjoff fragrances, I find that they have a certain craftsmanship and quality. That certainly doesn't mean that I like all of their fragrances, but they do have a lot of quality and, I think, care put into their creation. And this definitely gives off that vibe when you wear it. And those kinds of fragrances oftentimes lend themselves well to more formal events. So this could be something that you wear with a suit and tie for sure. I mean, you could dress it up to that kind of occasion. Could be like a nice spring evening night out fragrance as well. Not necessarily somewhere with a suit on, but just, you know, if you're going out on the town, that kind of thing for sure too. Personally, I would probably wear this one a little bit casually as well. But like I said, slightly more than, it's not really a grocery store fragrance, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, you can do that, and I probably will end up doing that at some time with this decant, because I'm sure this one will get worn. But that's not the best situation for it. It's not the best suited for that, in my personal opinion. Now, you know, as for if you have something like Naxos, if you like Naxos, I think this is a fragrance that you'll actually really enjoy. It does have, you know, there is something in it that almost gives it that honey-like sweetness. Now, it doesn't have honey. It doesn't quite smell like honey, but if you think of Naxos as like a tobacco honey fragrance, this one is much more tobacco forward than Naxos, but it does have a slight similarity in the way that I think the benzoin and the vanilla sort of sweeten up that tobacco just a little bit. But to me, it's a lot more reversed. So Naxos, I get, you know, a lot of that honey, and the tobacco really is sort of underneath that. So it's mostly a sweet fragrance, where this is reversed the other way around. But if you like that vibe, then I think this is definitely going to be something that is worth checking out. Anyways, you know, for me, this is actually a very solid release. You know, I have definitely stopped blind buying, or don't do it as much. I wouldn't have been disappointed if I had purchased this. I do love the presentation for this line. And this is a really, really solid fragrance, one I definitely recommend. And I think I would end up putting it probably in my top 10. I don't know that it would crack the top 5 of the ones that I recently made a video on the top 5. Don't think it would crack that, but it would definitely sit in that top 10. Really good quality fragrance. I definitely recommend checking it out if you like tobacco fragrances. If you're looking for something a little bit lighter, a little bit fresher, something that's a tobacco scent that you can wear spring and probably also the summer. But anyways, I think I'm going to cut the video there. I think that's all I really have to say about this one. Really nice release from Xerjoff. If you have any fresh tobacco fragrance recommendations or light tobacco fragrances that can be worn in the spring and summer, definitely let me know in a comment down below. And leave a comment down below if you have, you know, a favorite Xerjoff fragrance. Let me know what it is, because I definitely would be interested in trying some new ones that I haven't checked out before. Anyways, guys, that's it for this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.